In this video, you'll learn about 7 alternatives to Zapier that will help you with workflow automation. Now, I love Zapier, but I get the need for alternatives. There are usually 2 reasons people are looking for an alternative. One is maybe it's too expensive, and 2, maybe they can't achieve what they want in Zapier. Now, if you're in that first camp, the Zapier is too expensive, generally I find that price isn't always the best reason to shift tools. If it's prohibitively expensive, maybe, but Zapier saves me like 150 hours a month at this point. And it costs me $50 or $60 a month. And when you do the maths on that, we're talking 30 cents an hour of time saved. So it's pretty easy to justify the cost. But I do get it, like sometimes costs add up. And also maybe you can't achieve what you want in Zapier, so maybe you're looking for an alternative. I'm Jimmy from jimmyrose.me and Content Snare. And if you'd like to learn more ways to automate your business, hit that subscribe button below. Bear in mind when you're going through this that YouTube doesn't let me edit videos, right? So some of the user interfaces might have changed a little bit. Maybe my opinion has even changed. So just have a look at the video description below. I'll keep that updated with any changes to what I think about each tool, and also any discounts or coupons that apply to any of the tools. So if you're looking for a cheaper way in, have a look at the video description. So let's dig in and have a look at some of the Zapier alternatives. Just for comparison's sake, I have Zapier open here so you can see what a workflow looks like. So if you're new to workflow automation, we generally have a trigger that initiates the workflow followed by actions, and you might have some other types of things in here like filters so you can stop the workflow under certain conditions. But yeah, so this is a trigger, and the actions, you can click into any of these and see how it's all set up. So I really like the fact that it's collapsible and you know, so you can get an overview of what your workflow looks like pretty quickly. And if you've got some conditions in here, it doesn't actually display that well. So this is Zapier's paths feature. So if you have certain conditions that are true, it'll run this like sub-zap. So the way that works is a little bit clunky in my opinion, but overall it's pretty nice to look at and the interface is pretty simple. So let's move on to Integromat. This is my favorite Zapier competitor at this stage. I often use Integromat to achieve things that I cannot do in Zapier. If you'd like a more in-depth explanation, check out my video on Zapier versus Integromat. I'll link that up below. Overall, it's much more powerful, but much harder to use. Some parts of it are quite intuitive, like if you're going to add more steps, you know, you can add things pretty simply, but I just find some things are a bit of a pain in the ass. So, you know, if I was to start mapping in, obviously that's not an email, but if I was to start to map things in and click off, you'll find that that's actually disappeared, and I lose work like that all the time in Integromat. So there's just some small things about it that I'm not a big fan of, but overall, a workflow like this is almost impossible to create in Zapier. Just the fact that you can branch and actually see it all laid out really nicely. You know, and if I was to run this, actually I don't think there's any reason why I can't run this right now. So I like the way that as it runs, hopefully we've got some updates to trigger on. Maybe not, but what happens is a little bubble comes up and you can actually watch the workflow progress through with each new item, which is super cool. I like that. If you check the description below, there is a link that will get you 1 month free on the basic plan of Integromat. So I would recommend hitting that link and signing up for your plan. There is a free tier as well, so you can get started with no risk at all, but still use that link below. Yeah, it's an affiliate link, but it also gets you a free month on the basic plan. So next up is IFTTT. This stands for If This Then That, and this is one of the OGs in this space. It has been around for a long time. It used to be free, but they changed to a paid model, but it's extremely cheap. Like we're talking single-digit dollars per month, and it's mostly focused on home automation and Internet of Things. So I use IFTTT regularly for, you know, Google Home, Alexa type things. This account, I don't have anything active just because this is my testing account, but you can see like this is a list of the workflows that I've currently got, and when you're creating one, it looks like this. You can see it's made to be a lot simpler than the others. Really big text, really big things going on. IFTTT used to be really limited in what you can do, and you couldn't have multi-step workflows, but they've recently added the ability to create filters and to be able to query data. Now, I haven't used this a whole lot yet. I was trying to set up one today, and it was actually white screening on me, and I couldn't even finish the workflow. So I know this part of IFTTT is quite new, so I expect it to get better. But generally for business use cases, IFTTT is pretty limiting. It's getting better for sure, but it is worth checking out. And especially because it's so cheap, you might be able to do what you need with it. And if that's the case, then you get away with a cheaper automation platform. But for now, I don't use it for a whole lot. The thing I use it for the most are creating custom Google Assistant commands, and I'll link up to that video as well. It has a really good system for being able to create custom voice commands to use in Google Assistant. But yeah, I don't use it much other than that. So moving on, let's go to Integrately. Now this one's interesting. It is a newer competitor to Zapier, and I get asked about it a lot because they did a lifetime deal. And that makes it very popular among lifetime deal groups and freelancers. So there are thousands of people that have signed up for this on their lifetime account, and they often ask me about it. Now, if you had have asked me 1 month ago what I thought about Integrately, it would have been very different. Like, there was absolutely no way I was even considering it as an alternative to Zapier. The UI was super clunky, and because it was new, you couldn't accomplish as much. But I think it has come a long way in a few months. So I'm now keeping my eye on it again. So if we have a look at a workflow that I've created, you can see it's quite slow. So that actually kind of annoys me when I'm building automations. I don't like slow apps. So this is what a simple workflow builder looks like in Integrately. So we've got a new subscriber in MailerLite. We're going to create a deal and active campaign. You can see the data that's coming on the left, and you can map it in on the right. So if I was going to put a description of the contact name, I might have it there. So that it actually looks pretty good now. It used to be a lot more clunky. This is just a simple workflow though. If you wanted to add another condition, you have to switch it over to what they call the automation builder, which looks like this. So now we've got the subscriber in MailerLite. And I don't believe you can, you can collapse it. So, you can make it look similar to Zapier, I guess, and add different conditions and different apps. But at this point, I'm not using it a whole lot. Like, I still think it's really just Zapier, but a cheaper version. But obviously, because it's newer, they don't have as many integrations and you can't do as much. I think their entire marketing spiel is to be just a cheaper Zapier. And like I said before, just moving to a different tool because it's cheaper often isn't a good idea. Zapier's been around for a long time, so they're going to be a lot more reliable. They've been through all the teething issues that a new app is going to have. But I think Integrately is worth keeping an eye on. One thing they do talk about a lot in Integrately is the one-click, quote-unquote, one-click automations. So you can say, I want to integrate like Calendly with, I don't know, I'll just say Freshdesk here. And it comes up with like, when this happens, when an invitee is created in Calendly, we're going to create a company in Freshdesk. So they try to say that this is like a one-click integration. You say go. So at this point you'd say, nope, I don't want to change anything. I'm just going to go live with the integration. But in reality, you're always going to have to edit things. It's very rare that an out-of-the-box integration is going to be exactly what you want. So that interface you saw before is what you'll be using most. So if you're really worried about the price of Zapier, you might want to take a look at Integrately. That said, Integromat is often cheaper than Zapier as well. Below you will find my link to Integrately. At the time of recording, it includes some bonus tasks on your account each month, but just have a look below to see what the current special is. Now, moving on, let's check out Microsoft Power Automate. This used to be called Microsoft Flow. Now, immediately, you should recognize how Microsofty this looks. That might not necessarily be a bad thing, but it's also a really complex tool with a lot of stuff that you can do in it. It's quite Microsoft-centric. Like, if you are heavily in the Microsoft ecosystem, Power Automate's probably going to be really good for you. Like if you're using SharePoint, for example, right now, Zapier doesn't even integrate with SharePoint, and you can with Power Automate. My friends in IT who use Power Automate, it's kind of included if you're with 365 up to a very basic limit. They say, though, that it gets expensive very quickly and you have to pay on top of your 365 subscription. I haven't used it to its extremes yet, so I can't back that up. I'm not even going to get into some of these other things like data storage and whatever, which is kind of cool. Like, so Integromat has this to some level. Zapier doesn't really. So, you know, we're talking really advanced stuff at this point. But you can see you can add parallel branches, which is kind of cool. You can say run this and this at the same time. Their flow control is so like a conditional statement, like an if statement, is done like this. So you say if these conditions are true, then we'll do these. If not, we'll do these. And I mean, the UI is okay, I guess. It is looking a little bit clunky. I've got an update shared to Buffer here. And I mean, if you've used automation tools before, it's pretty intuitive. Like, I've just been playing around with it a bunch, and coming from Zapier and the other tools, it's a similar setup. So, you know, it's okay. If you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, probably a good option. And good at manipulating data and that kind of thing, whereas some of the other ones aren't as big at like changing data sets if you need that kind of thing. Now, on that note, one that I wasn't going to cover, but I may as well, is Parabola. I'm not going into the interface because I haven't used this too much because it's just not something I have a need for, but this is basically a data manipulation automation platform. So you can see an example there, like pull in yesterday's Shopify orders, show me ones that have been fulfilled, and send all the data as an email. So it's kind of good for reporting and data manipulation rather than like the when this happens, do this kind of thing that you get in the other systems. So worth a look if you need to do data manipulation. Now, I'm going to move on to Piesync. I get asked about this one a lot too, but however, it is not, I don't consider this a Zapier competitor at all. It is a contact synchronization thing. Now, a lot of people use Zapier for syncing contacts. Like, they'll say, when a contact's added to my CRM, also add them to my invoicing tool. Now, Zapier is not very good at that. You can get stuck in like infinite loops. As one system updates the other, it'll trigger the update to go backwards. But if you're doing one directional things, like saying every time someone signs up to, you know, in this case, we've got Intercom, and we want to sync them to ActiveCampaign. If you're doing it one way, it's fine with something like Zapier. But if you're doing two-way, you want, like when someone's added to ActiveCampaign, you also want to add them to Intercom. Piesync is much better here. But I've also really never found it worked that well for us, because there's always some weird thing that just, I can't get it to work for me, right? So if I configure the sync here, this is what the interface looks like. So we're saying we're going to do a two-way sync between Intercom and ActiveCampaign. We're saying if a contact is in any ActiveCampaign list, you know, and some conditions, you put in different filters here, we'll do a two-way sync. And then you can map in the fields between each. So the name obviously goes to the name in ActiveCampaign. In Intercom, you know, email sync, phone sync. But what I've found generally is, like, with all the tools that I use, there's always been some little gotcha where it just hasn't been able to do exactly what I want. So, for example, maybe a custom field that I need just isn't available for some reason, or in this example, it only syncs ActiveCampaign contacts with Intercom users, and I needed to sync with companies, and it didn't have that ability yet. So that was a deal breaker for me. But it is worth a look if you're just wanting to keep contacts in sync. So check out piesync.com. But otherwise, let's move on. The next one is, now I don't even know how to say this, n8n.io. Now it's a attractive option because it is open source, so you can actually download it and set it up on your own server for free. Of course, that means you have to install it and maintain it yourself, which can be a big turnoff. Something like this, I really don't want to have to be maintaining it myself, but they do have a cloud version, which you can see if you click there, but it is not free. Pricing is actually pretty good though, as they only charge for your entire workflow execution versus how many tasks run. All the other ones generally track your tasks. So every single action that happens, they'll classify that as something that they charge for, whereas this one, it executes your entire workflow for the one price. They don't have as many apps. The UI on the surface is pretty nice, like it looks good, but I've just been playing around with it, and honestly, I find it extremely difficult to use. And there are just some small things, like I found connecting to Trello, for example, normally you would have an OAuth system where you just basically click a button to authenticate with Trello and you're ready to go. But with this one, you have to go and create an app and get your OPI key, token, and secret, and that's getting pretty advanced for most people. So, I mean, I know a lot of advanced people use N8n. I don't know how to say this. But to be honest, I'm not going to be spending much time with it just because it's a bit more complicated than it needs to be at this stage. I even had trouble trying to get an item to link to this false node here. Like, I don't know why that didn't link. So I don't know. I am not the biggest fan, but I will be keeping my eye on it because I've seen some people I respect talk about it really well. So, and if you'd like to self-host your automation platform for data privacy or for whatever reason, it is basically the only one you can do that with. So worth checking out, and it's one to keep an eye on. And finally, let's look at Tray.io. Now, I don't even have an account with this one because this is clearly for the big end of town. If we look at the pricing, you'll see it starts at $695 per month. So for most people watching this, it's probably prohibitively expensive, but for enterprise companies, this is one to look at. I know that some SaaS companies actually use Tray as like an embedded automation product so they can integrate with all the apps that Tray integrates with without having to build them themselves. So that's kind of a use case for Tray. I believe it's called their embedded. There it is there, Tray embedded. So that's the one where you can embed it into a SaaS product without having to create integrations yourself. So if you are an enterprise client looking for enterprise type features, then check out Tray.io. Now that's it for the main ones I wanted to dig through, but I do have a few bonus ones just in case you want to have a look through them in your own time. Again, these will all be linked up below. But we've got Automate.io. Now, I don't know a whole lot about this one. It is pretty reasonably priced and seems to do a good job. I don't hear many people talking about it. I'm pretty sure I played with it years ago and found it just kind of too similar to what I was already doing in other automation tools, so just didn't really bother setting it up, but it's another one to look at. Workato is another super expensive one that's probably going to be out of the range of most people. But yeah, if you're in that enterprise market, check that one out. Zoho Flow, I get asked about quite a lot. Now, I hear very mixed reviews about this. I've heard the Flow tool is quite good itself, but I know a lot of people that have used Zoho products in general, like Zoho One, which is like their project management, CRM, and everything rolled into one. It's basically a series of hacked together apps that almost feel like they are built by different developers. So Flow is almost necessary to make them work together. But obviously it also talks out to other things like Gmail and Slack. But yeah, for the most part, I've been sticking away from Zoho. And finally, OneSaaS, which actually just got acquired. I saw this announcement like 2 days ago. And it's big in e-commerce, I believe. It could be worth looking at if you have an e-commerce business. This one's been around for a very long time, and I'm surprised I don't hear about it more often. But yeah, if you're in e-commerce, that is another one to check out. Now, if you just want to know which ones you should use, personally, I'm going to stick with Zapier and Integromat. These are the two that I continually use extensively. Integromat for some of the more advanced workflows. I am leaning to Integromat more and more these days. It does have kind of nice pricing, but there are a few things you kind of have to learn about the system, and it is pretty easy to blow out your task usage on your plan if you don't know what you're doing. But yeah, it's my favorite. So have a look below for a link to get Integromat on the basic plan for free for a month. The only other one I use is IFTTT, and that's just for some smaller workflows like using Google Assistant. I do plan on keeping my eye on N8n. Hopefully that gets a bit easier to use. I like what they're doing with it, and we'll see how it progresses over time. That's it. I hope you have found a great Zapier alternative in this video. If you have any questions, please drop in a comment below. And remember to have a look at the video description for any updates. If I've changed my opinion on any of these tools, I'm going to post it down in the description, along with any discounts and coupons for any of these tools. And if you would like a more in-depth explanation on any of these tools, go ahead and drop me a comment on that as well. I'd be happy to create a follow-up video if enough people need more information. All right, again, I've been Jimmy from jimmyrose.me and Content Snare. If you'd like to learn more ways to automate your business, hit that red subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.